I was born in England, and a place called Puddletown Rugby Club was where I started rugby. Well, I started in school first in St. Mary's, Puddletown, and that's where I got my love for rugby. And pretty much we formed a rugby club back there back in the day. And I started playing when I was about 11 years old, played through school, and the club we started was based on a school's old boy team. So we had a very good school team, and then the local club wasn't great. So we decided to start our own club. So it was like an old boys club. So that's pretty much where we started. And then I was very involved there. I played for Exeter Rugby Club, which was, they weren't the rugby club they are now. They're more of kind of a Division 4 team in those days in England. And then in about 1985, I came over to Seattle, or I came to the Pacific Coast with a friend of mine called Lance Hogarth. And we traveled up and down the West Coast, Pacific Coast, and we eventually came to Seattle, where Lance had a couple of friends. They were playing sevens at the time. This would have been about probably June, July of the summer of '85. And the sevens season was pretty much full on. And then we both got involved with the sevens. We were both playing. Lance was playing in London. I was playing in the southwest of England. And then we just got involved with the sevens, and it was a great social scene. And of course we were both kind of mid-20s, and so it was a good time to come. And the rugby club, there was a lot of players around that time, around our age group, and there's a lot of kind of college graduates, guys who maybe just come to Seattle, and it was just a real vibrant time. And we got involved with the sevens, and I coached the sevens team. I was like player coach. I was really into the sevens, and I remember we won the Tacoma Sevens, and we beat Puget Sound Beach in the final down in the Aroma of Tacoma Sevens. So it was down in Orting, I think it was, which was east of Tacoma. So we went down there, and then that went well. But I had to get back because I was captain of the club back home. But Lance stayed. So that first summer, all I remember was beautiful days and traveling, and it was just a good time. And you know, the rugby club in Seattle were so good to us. We got work there, and it was just good fun. And then, so I went back for a year, and then the following summer I came back. I had such a good time. I had to come back, so I came back over and played sevens again. And I think I can't remember how I think we possibly lost that year to Puget Sound in the final. But then I decided I was going to stay. And I stayed over, and so with part of that was I became coach. Now, the coach was a guy called Mike Smeeth. I don't know if you're familiar, and he was a former London Irish, brilliant rugby player, to be honest with you, captain London Irish to a English Cup final, and he was a reluctant coach at the time. And once I arrived, it was like quick hands over to me, because he didn't really want to coach. He wanted to get on with the rest of his life, and so I ended up coaching because I had an affinity for. I just really wanted to coach, and got deeply involved in Seattle Rugby Club, and it was good. It was good fun, and got really involved in high school rugby, and because I could see when we got there that the players were just so new to the game. The enthusiasm was so good, but sometimes players didn't start until like the mid-20s in those days, and it was just too late to really take to the game. So we actually got a high school league going back in I think it was about '87, and we got about 8 school teams or under 19s teams. Some of them were high school teams, some of them were like club under 19s teams. And we got an 18 league going in the Northwest, or more like a Washington high school league. And I think that still goes today. I'm not sure. You could tell me about that, Jennifer.
There's different. I'm sure some of those same clubs still exist. The Vikings, Liberty, places like that. There's definitely East Side. They're not necessarily connected directly to high schools anymore, but they are very much very strong youth clubs. Yes.
Yeah, like the teams in those days was, I got the Seattle kind of junior team though, which I think is the Vikings now, is it? And then I also coached the team called Redmond High, Overlake School, which had their own fields and everything, unbelievable facility. And then that moved, because I started bringing players in from outside Overlake, we had to kind of get out of Overlake and we moved it to Redmond. And Redmond High was like based on the Lake Washington School District. So we had kids from Lake Washington and from Redmond High. And I think people like Travis Schultz, David Pedria, guys like that were involved with that group. And they obviously went on to play pretty much their whole rugby careers in Seattle. And a whole bunch of guys came through that. And then you had like Kentwood and Liberty High School, which Mark Bullock, who is now in Denver, Colorado, he was involved. And he played him and a guy called Rick Ravston. I don't know if Rick I think, still around. So Rick was there. So there was a lot of good people. And then Kyle Patrick, who was with Valley Kangaroos. And then you had Barney Rapp was there with Tacoma. And we used to play Friday afternoons, like 6 o'clock in the evening. And it was awesome. I really cut my teeth coaching over there, to be honest, at that. So I was doing that on a Friday. We trained in the afternoons. And then in the evening, obviously, involved with Seattle Rugby Club. When we started, we just played in the Northwest League, and we would play like friendlies in BC. And I remember the first week, Labor Day weekend, I think was in September, we would go up to BC and we would play a game on the Saturday. We'd go up on the Princess Margarita, the ferry, and we'd go up maybe on a Friday evening, play Saturday, and then maybe play Sunday against a couple of local teams in Victoria. I remember that was just I remember that was an awesome trip. And then we played, in those days, Puget Sound were by far the strongest team. And the Portland Pigs were the two top teams. And the way it worked then was you had a West Coast, Pacific Coast Championships. So the top two Northwest teams would go to the Pacific Coast Championships, which whoever won that invariably won the Nationals. But it was 3 games in 3 days. So you play like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We never qualified for like the first 4 or 5 years I was involved. We were very much probably 3rd or 4th and in the league at that time. And then, so the goal was, Puget Sound were like a really good team. Puget Sound would be one of the top teams in the country, and they would have had a lot of players, like Division 1 athletes. They were state of the art, I thought, Puget Sound. And then Seattle, we were kind of a little bit more social possibly. But that kind of changed. We got a good group of guys together, and over the next 4 or 5 years, we kind of, the scores went from 50, 60 points down to close losses. And then in the end, I remember one of my greatest memories ever was when we actually beat them. I remember we beat them in Green Lake. And that was pretty special to beat them after years of getting thumped. And it was good stuff. I mean, massive crowds, and it was just good rugby. And we played first, seconds, and towards the end there, we played first, second, thirds. I even think one year we played first, second, thirds, and O boys. So 4 different levels, and they were special. And Puget Sound were more involved with the US type of side of things, and they would go around the US playing rugby, games like challenge matches against On Back and O Blue and teams like that. And then we decided that we needed to go to BC. So I remember going up to Abbotsford, I think it was, on a Monday night. I mean, talk about living the dream. Wasn't really. We'd be traveling up on a Monday night from league meetings, and because we used to play the BC teams, but A, they'd never be strong, and B, they'd never travel to us. We'd go up and play, and then they would cancel the games back down in Seattle. So in the end, we thought, well, the only way we can get these guys to play us as if we play in the league up there, which took a deep, it just took a massive commitment from the player membership in Seattle. But I think within a couple of years, I remember we used to play the Fraser Valley League, and if you won the Fraser Valley League, you would go to the BC semi-finals. And I remember at least one year we went to the semi-finals, and there was always something special beating the Canadian teams in Canada. You could beat them at home, but beating them up there, you knew that it was special, and they were always so tough to beat up there. So that was a special memory from those days, Yeah, I mean, Larry, obviously the Old Boys Club I remember they used to meet in Triples, which was a kind of like a bar down on Lake Union. And we used to meet down there on a Friday night. They used to meet on a Friday night. I remember, obviously, we used to go down and you'd probably drink for free for the night, and because we had no money at the time. And then I remember they were special nights, and I remember Shane Carew, and there's a whole bunch of old boys, Alice McCutcheon, Kenny Western, Bert Turnbull, Jim Gordy would be a really good friend of mine, and they would almost be the custodians of the rugby club, and but they never beat. I remember at the time it was all talk, like we're going to beat Beach every year, they're going to beat Beach, and then it was so cool that we actually got together with the kind of the generation of the time, and we actually beat Beach, and then we beat them multiple times, and that was a cool, because they were good. Like, and I remember one year we actually beat them in the Pacific Coast Championships. We beat Puget Sound in the Pacific. We drew them, and we ended up beating them in the semi-final of that or something. I can't remember how it was, but that was pretty special. So yeah, it was good. But then there's like Larry Nash, Latterly, even like people like Craig Wicks, a young Craig Wicks, Sean Loudenbach, obviously Travis, David Peter, all those guys were guys I probably coached, but were characters in their own right, and I know carried on with Seattle Rugby Club and Northwest Rugby way after I left,
Somebody
I remember Gino McCarthy was the coach, because when we came over, Mike Smeeth and Gino McCarthy were both London Irish players. And what they did was, because they were carpenters, and they were just working on the building site. One went to Seattle, and one went to Puget Sound. So between them, they got a lot of work from that. And Gino was coaching Beach, and then Mike coached Seattle. And then obviously when Mike kind of handed the job to me, and then Gino was the opposing coach there for a while. I remember another coach, Jeff Doctor, back in those days. Jeff was also in Overlake before I was there. And then I remember there's so many good players. Remember we had a guy in Seattle, a guy called John Knutson, who actually went to Beach. When I went back to England after that first summer, John Knutson joined Puget Sound Beach. It was absolutely unheard of, He kind of and he only went because it was better rugby at the time, and I remember him and his wife Kathy, and there's a whole, the teams were, even though they were real rivalries, they were also a lot of good friends, and they were, a lot of them were work buddies as well. I remember Joe Nickerson, the prop, Bam Bam. There's a whole bunch of guys, Mike Telkamp. There's a lot of players there that just come back to me now, players who used to play, and they're good players as well, really good athletes, and could play anywhere, to be honest with you, I started coaching in America, and I think in America, what happened, I used to be good friends with a guy called Mark Bullock, Rex Norris, Rick Ravston, and the thing that the Americans, I think I probably possibly had good knowledge on the game, but the people I was involved with on the coaching side of things were very good coaches. Like Rex and Mark were both high school football coaches, and I think Rex is involved with that tackling thing now, with the showing all the college football and NFL guys how to tackle properly, the rugby way. And what's the company in? Is it Serevi Rugby? But what did they move to?
Adamus now, yes.
Yeah, is that still going? Yeah. And Rex and I would have been, Rex would have come in and would have been a football coach first. But the thing those guys probably helped me with was just how to coach. They could coach anything, and I remember I used to go to Mark Bullock's football games then in Liberty High School, and I'd sit in the back. He was defensive coordinator, I remember at the time, and I was just intrigued. And even to this day, I'd be very into college, not so much into the NFL, but I'd be really into the Huskies and really into college football, and that's always intrigued me. So when I came back to then, I had a chance in '95. There's a guy called George Hook who used to do this coaching certification in America. He used to do it all over, like level 1s and level 2s. And I got involved with him, and he basically set me up in a rugby club called Blackrock College Rugby Club, which was in Dublin. So I came over for a year, and it ended up being 3 years. And then at the end of that, I kind of got let go, and I was going to come back to America because I was living in America, but I always thought I'd end up in America, and I will come over here and maybe get some good experiences in the big leagues. But the plan was always to go back to America, but obviously it never happened. And then so what happened was I left with Blackrock. I had a lot of success with their under-20s team. And we won like a couple of national championships here for under-20s. So then the Trinity College, who are the oldest club in the world, very famous club in the centre of Dublin, their college team, they were looking for a director of rugby for the first time ever. This would be 1998. So I'd been in the country 3 years, 3 seasons, and I thought that would suit me. So I went for it, went for the interview and actually got the job. But the club was it was a disaster area for the first year. It's probably the hardest year of my life. And we really struggled. They were down in the bottom leagues of the National League, and we nearly went down. The way it works in Ireland, you have the top 4 or 5 leagues, and then it goes to provincial. So all the provincial, like the 4 provinces of Ireland, have their own leagues. There's like a big hierarchy pyramid of rugby. And Trinity were probably going to go out of the leagues. So what I tried to do, I tried to set it up like a football program or like a collegiate program in America. I tried to kind of do the same with Trinity, which was unheard of in Ireland at that time, that we had S&C and no one was doing S&C properly at the time. And we kind of set up our own program. And after a couple of years, we began to recruit athletes, and we went from the lowest league, and now for instance, right now we'd be in the top 5 in Ireland senior club, and we're a college team still, but now we'd have like, there's probably 3 or 4 players. We have 3 players now on the Ireland squad. And like Dan Sheehan, the hooker, was with us. He's probably the best hooker in the world right now, and Ryan Baird, and we've got several players. Joe McCarthy. We've gone from being quite a poor, nobody playing for us type. And it's also tough to get into the university. It's kind of like Ivy League type standards. So it's very hard to get guys in. So, because everyone wants to go to Trinity, obviously it's probably the Oxford or the top university in Ireland. But we couldn't get people in. And obviously, over here it's all national exams, so that you can't get people in like just because you're good at rugby. You have to hit certain standards to get in. And so that's always been the big obstacle here. But the whole point in Trinity, I tried to make it like what I saw in America. So a lot of our culture and a lot of the practices we use would be probably what I found in America, or in Seattle. And because obviously in North America, professional sports have been there forever, And the year I came to Ireland, rugby went professional, which was 1995. So I came in right at the beginning of professional rugby here. So that's been pretty cool. And our under-20s, I still coach our under-20s. We have our under-20s have won the last 3 All-Irelands. And so we've been pretty strong lately, and obviously that's an ongoing thing. We just recruiting and all that sort of stuff is very important. And that was always probably one of our strengths back in the old days in Seattle, was recruiting. I think we were, I worked hard on recruiting, because it's all about players. You know, it's coaching's important, but if you don't have the players, you're not going to be successful, you know. In America, probably without a doubt, the greatest thing I've ever been involved with really was when we were involved back in the 90s. We actually started, or I kind of helped found the US 19s. And I just never made sense to me that, you know, the Eagles always tried to compete at, you know, senior level, but didn't compete at the underage levels. It's almost like, why aren't we competing at senior levels? And we, myself, I kind of got it going, and then the guy called Mike Tolkien, who ended up coaching the Eagles in New York, and Mark Bullock was involved. And what we did was we got our own national high school team, which was probably way before we should have had a team. And we used to go to New Zealand and Australia every year for about 6-7 years. And out of that, several Eagles, you know, came out of it. And to be honest with you, I still think it's the way to go for American rugby. I think if American rugby want to be strong at their own World Cup in 2031 or whatever, they need to build through the 20s, you know. And to me, it's just plain as a nose on your face. You've got to build through the youth. And that's why in Seattle, you know, we got the high school leagues going. And now, you know, then we got that we used to go to New Zealand, and we used to start winning games over there. We used to go for a month, and we used to play like 7 or 8 games, and it was, you know, that without a doubt was the biggest influence on me rugby wise. You know, when we were involved with that, we used to go, you know, like I said, we used to go to New Zealand. We went to New Zealand, I think 4 times, Australia 3 times, and the last year we actually took USA to the World Cup, under 19s Cup in Toulouse, and that's when I kind of signed off. I kind of thought that the national union, you know, we should take that on. But unfortunately, as soon as I left, they let it go, and they've never really recovered. I think they play a little bit 20s now, but to me, it's we've got to invest in the youth, you know. And I say we, I'm talking American rugby. I think we need to invest in the youth. The under 20s is how we need young Americans playing rugby. You know, it's all about training age here. You know, how long have you been playing rugby? And we need guys playing good rugby at 16, 17, 18, you know, 19 years old, culminating in an under 20s type program. And I think the US could compete at that level. I have no doubt they could. But we just haven't put it in place yet. You know, we haven't really invested in it. I know we have under 20s, but we haven't really invested in it, you know. So, and that I'll be very passionate about that, you know, and always have been. And, you know, we have a lot of American teams come here on tour, and we always take them for sessions and stuff. And I think it's very important, you know, that we get the youth playing, you know, playing at a high level.